You're listening to Raised by Spirit, Bloodline by Design, written and narrated by ancestral medium Jenn LeFevre. Decree 11, the Mother of Fire. Passage 11, the Lioness and the Architect. On the evening of July 29, 2018, once the house finally fell quiet, she stepped outside craving stillness and space. She crossed the yard to the fire pit, gathering sticks along the way and building the fire slowly and intentionally. When the flame caught, it lifted and cast a warm light across the night sky. She settled into her chair, pulling her grandmother's blanket around her as the fire crackled. She watched the flames dance, remembering the first time Chief had stepped through fire to meet her, how the world had changed in that moment, and how something ancient had appeared out of an ordinary evening. The night felt open in a way that made everything she had remembered easier to hold. The regression had shown her pieces of her own soul, yes, but something about it felt larger than that. Sitting there, she felt the memory of the sword rise again. She wondered what it really meant. She thought of how Saint Germain had guided her, and the moment Michael placed the sword back into her hands. Then suddenly, the fire parted, and a radiant woman began to form before her. She didn't simply appear. She materialized with the devastating grace of a goddess who'd created realms long before humanity learned to speak her name. "I am Sekhmet," she said. "I am the flame within you." Her voice wasn't sound. It was power. It moved through the atmosphere like a current of molten gold, vibrating through the fire, through the earth, through Jenn. "You've carried what was never yours," she continued, her golden eyes burning with a recognition that felt like a mirror held to the soul. "You've walked with burdens that don't belong to you. That ends now." The fire lowered itself, as if listening to its mother. The regression opened a door. "Yes," she said, "but it wasn't only your door. You stepped into the memories of the many. You touched the lineage that threads through lifetimes, through bloodlines, through the rise and fall of realms. Not as burden, but as birthright. Your essence has walked with mine. You rise from the same flame." Her eyes held Jenn still, not with domination, but with the sovereignty of one who sees the absolute truth of all. "Your ancestors opened the way," she said. "I have returned to guide you beyond. I am here to show you the future that awaits you, and the path that connects all souls collectively. The sword is remembrance. The flame is the bloodline. Yet you don't walk this path alone," she said. "The other will come, one who brings order where I bring fire, one who speaks an instruction where I speak in decree. Together, we shape the divine plan." The flames brightened, casting one final sweep of light across the night, illuminating her like a living sun. "You're here to return," she said, merging back into the fire. She sat speechless, thoughtless even, stilled by what she had just witnessed. She felt suspended between worlds, the ordinary night behind her, the impossible truth before her. Hours slipped past unnoticed as the fire sank into a soft orange glow, its remaining embers pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the ash. "It's got to be late," she said to herself. Rising from the chair, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders, she took one more glance at the fire pit, half expecting the flames to rise again, half knowing they wouldn't, and headed toward the house. Inside, she sat at the kitchen table, opened her journal, and let the words spill out, every detail, every line Sekhmet had spoken. When she finally closed the journal, she made her way to the bedroom, slipped beneath the covers, and drifted to sleep. The next morning, she woke with the strange sense that she'd surfaced from somewhere deep, somewhere older. For a moment, she lay still, staring at the ceiling, letting the memory of the night return in fragments. She sat up slowly, noticing her journal still resting on the nightstand where she'd left it. She wondered if she'd imagined the whole thing and thought to herself, "Who is Sekhmet?" As she made her way down to the kitchen, pouring herself a cup of coffee, she opened her journal again, rereading the words she'd written the night before. "I am Sekhmet. I am the flame within you." The name tugged at her, unfamiliar yet strangely resonant. The question rose again and again in her mind. Who is Sekhmet? She carried her coffee to her laptop and typed the question into the search bar. Results appeared instantly, statues from ancient temples and descriptions of an Egyptian goddess she'd never heard of. Sekhmet was described as a goddess of fire, transformation, death, rebirth, and cosmic balance, tied to the embodiment of truth, harmony, and universal order. She sat back in her chair, stunned. She's real, an ancient goddess. And she came to me? Everything she was reading about Sekhmet felt impossibly aligned with what she'd witnessed. The fire, her authority, her presence that felt like both destruction and sanctuary. But she needed more. She needed something that went deeper than short summaries and scattered mythology pages. As she searched, the book Transformation in the Belly of a Goddess by Nikki Scully appeared. She clicked the link instinctually. The description alone made her sit up straighter. It spoke of spiritual initiation, the fire of purification, the dismantling of old identities, the fierce love of a divine guardian, the rebirth that follows surrender, and the ancient role of Sekhmet as a force of cosmic balance. She ordered the digital version instantly and started to read. As she read, the text spoke of truth, harmony, cosmic order, and the way Sekhmet protects that order by burning away distortion. It described the lioness as the embodiment of the inner fire, the kundalini, the rising of consciousness. She kept reading, absorbing every line as it revealed how she was often misunderstood as destructive, when in truth she destroys only what blocks the soul from its purpose and evolution. The author continues throughout the book, cultivating a personal relationship with her as a guide, explaining that she appears when a soul rises into a larger role, when personal healing becomes collective healing, when the individual journey returns to the cosmic. She closed her laptop. The soul's journey and the great return. Holy shit, she whispered, the astonishment hitting her full force. As the months passed, Sekhmet's presence had become a steady pulse in the background of her days, returning again and again through automatic writing. Her messages came in waves, detailed and vast, as though they weren't meant for one person, nor a single moment. She didn't know what she was supposed to do with such infinite messages. Instinctively, she did the only thing she knew to do. She tucked them away in her journal, just as she had with Maggie and Cora in her earliest years, held in sacred concealment, waiting for their moment to rise. Weeks later, in August of 2019, during one of Jenn's group meditations, her living room glowed with the last light of day as the sun slipped toward the horizon. She was joined by her regular group meditation attendees, each settling into their usual place on the floor or the couch. A guided meditation she had written played softly in the background, its cadence familiar, steady, grounding. As everyone settled inwardly, the collective energy dropped into a calm, unified rhythm. Typically, she didn't meditate during groups. She was there to guide, to hold space, to teach others how to understand what they were receiving. That was her role. That was the structure. But on this occasion, she did something different. She closed her eyes along with the meditation. Instantly, the space around her shifted as an enormous ancient elephant appeared before her. Its skin was etched like stone, eyes deep with wisdom, as if he too had watched the rise and fall of realms. An illumination began to glow beneath its skin, dissolving the elephant from within until it faded into a soft glow. As the light settled, luminous lines of light began to form, thin, precise, geometric. They moved with intelligence, connecting, folding, expanding. Circles appeared next, 12 of them, each one forming a perfect ring. Straight lines followed, intersecting and weaving through all 12 circles with flawless precision. Its pattern revealed itself in perfect symmetry, as though she were witnessing the architecture of creation forming itself before her. In the space of a heartbeat, something subtle began to appear in its center, as though the design were preparing to reveal itself. It pulsed once more as a silhouette emerged from its center. Not a body, not a face, but a silhouette made entirely of illumination. The presence held its position, neither approaching nor retreating. Only his voice was clear. "I have arrived at the hour of revelation," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "I am here to show you the origin of the divine plan as it reaches its completion." A quiet recognition moved through her as she listened. He continued, his voice steady with certainty. "You were born of the eternal flame that cannot be extinguished. For this reason, this sacred task rests upon you." A stillness settled between them, the kind that follows after truth is spoken aloud. "Gather her messages," he said. "They are not separate. They move in one sequence and rise from one design. Through your voice, the awakening of this age is called forth." Heat gathered around her hands. rising in the same unmistakable way it had in her dream with Saint Germain, and again when Michael placed the sword back into her hands. "You have been called forth to fulfill the divine plan," he said, his voice softening though its authority endured. "What's been placed before you comes in perfect order, in deliberate measure, and in fidelity to truth." Another pulse rose from the light behind him, gently embracing him back into the glow. "You'll remember when the moment arrives," he said, the light gathering around him, for nothing is revealed before the appointed time that is written. And in the next breath, as quickly as he'd appeared, his silhouette dissolved into light, the geometry faded, and the room settled back into the quiet pulse of the living room. Jenn remained still, her eyes open but unfocused, the room around her blurred by the afterglow of his presence. The others were still deep in meditation, their breath slow and steady, unaware that something out of this world had unfolded beside them. His language echoed through her, not just the words but the structure of them. It was unlike anything she'd ever heard, yet it carried the same ancient pulse she'd felt with Sekhmet. Was he the one she spoke of, she thought. Sekhmet said another would come, but who was he, she wondered. She replayed his words in her mind as she reached for her journal, needing to capture them before they slipped away. "You were born of the eternal flame that cannot be extinguished. For this reason, this sacred task rests upon you." Closing her journal just as the first rustle of movement stirred through the room. One by one, the others began to shift as they returned from their meditation. As group ended, Jenn moved quietly, helping where needed, offering a few closing words, guiding them out into the evening with the same calm steadiness she always carried. And the house fell silent. As she closed up her shop for the night, she couldn't help but wonder, who was he? The question rose again, sharper now, threaded with awe. Whoever he was, he didn't stand apart from Sekhmet. He accompanied her. She sat at her kitchen table that night, long after the house had gone still, her journal open before her and the pages filled with the words she'd written in a rush, his words, his rhythm, his impossible presence. Reading it over and over as if it would reveal its meaning. Each time her eyes kept returning to one sentence in particular. "You were born of the eternal flame that cannot be extinguished. For this reason, this sacred task rests upon you." The phrasing had a strange familiarity. It felt like scripture, as though it had been spoken long before her lifetime. She opened her laptop and typed in the phrase, "You were born of the eternal flame that cannot be extinguished. For this reason, this sacred task rests upon you." Dozens of results appeared, but none of them felt right. She tried again with different combinations of the words, but still nothing resonated. She exhaled, ready to close the computer, when Orion's voice pierced through her frustration. "Enoch?" his voice echoed. "Why does that sound so familiar?" she thought. Without hesitating, she typed the word into the search box. The results loaded instantly. The Book of Enoch. The first line she read carried the same language and authority as the voice that had spoken to her earlier. It described dream visions, origins, divine order, and the architecture of creation. It was him. It was Enoch. "Holy shit," she let out, unable to contain the awe and disbelief flooding her. In the days that followed, she still couldn't understand why an Egyptian goddess and a biblical figure had appeared in the same breath of her life, woven into the same unfolding. But confusion didn't outweigh instruction. Sekhmet had spoken the messages, and Enoch had revealed their union and purpose. So she did the only thing that made sense. She gathered every message she'd received from Sekhmet, opened a new document, and began transcribing them, combining the words from scattered pages into unified form until they rose as one collective message. The messages that follow were spoken by Sekhmet, and together became known as the 14 Decrees of the Divine Plan. The First Age. In the First Age, before the existence of karma, before the weaving of contracts, before the first shadow touched the earth, humanity lived in complete harmony with all universal cosmic laws in fulfillment of the divine plan. The incarnation process isn't a descent, it's the journey of the soul's great return. Souls walked the earth as their journey began, and the Elohim walked among them as designed, each presence moving in perfect accord with the divine plan and creation itself. The rising of the fallen. In 430,000 BCE, it came to pass that those who abandoned their appointed stations rose against the divine plan. In that hour, the descent of the fallen occurred, and the great ones of renown, born of forbidden unions, entered the earthly realm. They wielded fear with their surrendered power, bending the collective and drawing humanity beneath their will. Their coming fractured the natural order, and a distortion rippled through the architecture of creation, echoing across every realm. The summoning of the Elohim. In response to this distortion, other Elohim and I were summoned to return to the Most High, stepping back from amongst humanity to answer the call. In the chambers of the Most High, karma was called into existence, and we were assigned the sacred task to construct and oversee the weaving of karmic contracts through each incarnation experience for complete restoration. Thus began the era in which karmic contracts came into existence. Laws established to restore cosmic balance and guide every soul, even the fallen, back toward the divine plan and the great return. The disruption of creation. When the fallen laid their power upon the collective life force, upon the currents of the collective mind, and upon the living current of creation, humanity was turned from its design and drawn into distortion. This is remembered in fragmented texts and scriptures. The timelines were altered, the truth was obscured, yet the divine plan didn't falter. The soul's evolutionary journey merely slowed and began to echo and repeat across the ages, cycling through distortion until restoration for all is achieved. The Great Forgetting. As ages passed, the influence of the fallen deepened as humanity entered the cycle of karmic imbalance. This became known as the Great Forgetting. Across generations, the distortion was carried forward, and across lifetimes it rippled. These ripples became what you now call generational and karmic cycles, wandering through echoes of the original imbalance until remembrance would rise again. The design of the vessel. The vessel that a soul embodies during incarnations is designed to generate immense emotional energy, far more than the physical form can contain. The excess returns to the earth, flowing like a torus field through the realm's living electromagnetic currents. Thus, the vessel and the soul essence are designed as both conduits and contributors to the realm, working in union through the frequency they embody. This influences both the individual experience and the collective as a whole. These currents, though unseen and forgotten, remain sacred and alive, becoming the very pathways the fallen sought to erase from memory and bend to their control. The imprint of imbalance. The cycles of karmic imbalance leave an imprint upon the soul. When something traumatic or unjust occurs, the current doesn't vanish. It becomes an energetic residue carried into the next incarnation. This residue may appear as a birthmark, a phobia, or a repeating pattern with no origin in the present life. Thus, the mind and body become the maps of unresolved karma, expressing what the soul has incarnated to remember. The architecture of experience. For every experience arises as a natural response to thought, emotion, karmic contract, and the lessons chosen to restore balance and harmony. These truths are essential in this age of remembrance, for they reveal the architecture of evolution and the rise of remembrance itself. The timelines. Every karmic contract contains multiple timelines in which the opportunity to restore balance will appear. No opportunity is ever lost. Some timelines are fixed, others are flexible. The measure of free will. What humanity calls free will is the measure of flexibility available when a karmic contract presents itself during an incarnation experience. The range of possible expressions is encoded within the body's genetic, epigenetic, and cellular memory. The nature of contracts. A karmic contract is not a legal agreement as humanity understands it. It's a neutral, energetic agreement chosen by the soul to continue its evolution through the great return. When the balance choice is made during the incarnation experience, balance is restored. Thus, the karmic imbalance at its origin is erased from existence. The crossroads. When a contract activates within an incarnation, the soul stands at a crossroads. If the soul resists, unable to remember the karmic cycle that forged the contract, it remains in stagnation and the cycle repeats across lifetimes. But if the soul responds with remembrance and balance, the imbalance dissolves across all space and time. This is the path that leads back to the great return, the power of remembrance. Without remembrance, the soul cannot perceive the deeper purpose behind its experiences. Remembrance unlocks the contract. Remembrance restores the living current. All is held within the genetic memory to ensure the divine plan unfolds. The return. When the imbalance is resolved, when the soul chooses the act that restores harmony, the imprint dissolves. The birthmark fades, the phobia lifts, the pattern ceases, the soul evolves. Karma and reincarnation are not punishments, but systems of balance, self-correcting mechanisms designed to guide the soul back to its divine sovereignty. Hours had passed before she finally leaned back from the keyboard, her fingers hovering above the last line she'd typed. The unified message on the screen unfolded before her as a living testimony of something ancient, cosmic, and impossibly vast. Nothing resembled anything she'd studied or sought out, yet all of it echoed Orion's revelations about the soul's journey and the great return. In truth, Orion never appeared without purpose, and he never allowed anyone into her presence without permission. As that truth settled, something deep within her rose instinctively. Enoch and Sekhmet had joined in alliance with Orion, their union weaving the same message, the same cosmic design and architecture of creation, as though the three of them spoke as a unified source. Their presence carried a truth so ancient and unmistakable that she didn't need history or doctrine to confirm what she had been shown. While she tried to grasp the details of the message that night, Orion's voice cut through her thoughts with perfect clarity. Just as I told you. In time, you'd remember. His timing was so precise that a soft laugh escaped her. She closed the laptop and let the moment settle around her, letting the echoes of the message continue to move through her like a tide she no longer resisted.